You're listening to Raised by Spirit, Bloodline by Design, written and narrated by ancestral medium Jenn LeFevre. Decree 5. The shadow reveals what the light demands. Passage 5. The initiation of the shadowed path. The house had grown heavier in the years after her father's passing, as if the walls themselves were holding their grief. It didn't storm through the rooms. It seeped, and then it settled. It became part of the air they breathed. Jenn moved through that heaviness, trying to listen beneath the surface of it all, feeling the shift, the way sorrow pooled in corners, the way memory clung to doorframes. Her mother moved through the house with a different kind of listening. In the beginning, the boys were the only ones who could soften her sorrow. Jeremy's laughter eased the darkness, and the baby's presence brought a brief warmth to her voice. But as time passed, even their light couldn't lift the shadows gathering around her. The shadow of grief had settled too deeply. She searched for signs of danger, for proof that the world was slipping out of control. Her grief rose alongside her faith, and scripture became her weapon. Every conversation with them turned into a warning. And then there was Rich. He moved through the house with a steadiness that should have been comforting. He was a man who lived by principle, not performance. He didn't need a church to know right from wrong. He didn't need scripture to understand compassion. His conviction was shaped by life rather than doctrine. But to her mother, that quietness looked like defiance. His conviction looked like threat. His refusal to bend to her word echoed the darkness she warned them about. She watched him with suspicion, convinced that anything outside her doctrine was dangerous. She didn't see the integrity in him. She didn't see the similarity, the quiet strength in him that echoed the man she loved. She didn't see the way he anchored Jenn when the world felt too heavy. She only saw a target carved by her own shadows. Jenn felt the tension long before anyone spoke of it. She heard it in the way her mother's voice sharpened whenever Rich entered the room, small comments turning into harsh remarks. She felt it in the way her mother's doctrine grew louder, as if volume could win the arguments she kept trying to start. She walked between them, carrying the whispers of the other realms on one side and the weight of her mother's shadow unraveling on the other. She didn't know how to bridge the distance. She only knew it was growing, slow and steady, like a fault line beneath their feet, waiting for the moment it would finally rupture. In that fracturing space, Jenn and Rich did their best to hold steady. They wanted their children to grow with room to breathe, to question, to wander, to remember who they were without fear shaping their steps. Their beliefs were not to be imposed, but discovered through curiosity and experience, through the quiet unfolding of their own knowing. If the boys embraced religion, that was fine. If they chose another path, that was fine too. But the freedom they offered was fragile beneath her mother's presence. Her rigid teachings threaded themselves through ordinary conversations, becoming shadows that cast fear. The disagreements grew constant, each one edged with certainty that left no room for choice. And while Jenn worked to keep the peace in her own home, another storm was forming beyond it. Her sister had been drifting toward it for years, drawn into an inherited shadow set in motion the moment she met her now ex-husband, a man who carried deception as effortlessly as their grandfather once had. In the beginning, the lies were small and forgettable, omissions easily excused. But as the marriage unfolded over 10 years, the deceit deepened, the infidelity multiplied, and his confidence in his own belligerence grew. He moved without fear because he never had to answer for his actions, and beneath it all was the unbearable grief of losing their father, an ache that didn't fade but settled deeper into her sister's bones. She carried the weight of a fractured home on already exhausted shoulders, holding together what little she could with hands that were shaking. But once their father passed, everything changed, though she didn't yet know it. As the marriage deteriorated, when she finally dared to speak the truth aloud, when she tried to pull the reality into the light, she was dismissed. And in that silence, he found protection. But silence has limits. Now on the other side of life, her father saw everything clearly. What had been done, what had been silenced, all laid bare before him. Justice wasn't lost in death. What had been broken would demand restitution, and the scales would not remain unbalanced. One summer day, 6 months after his passing, her sister's now ex-husband stood outside with a metal stake in one hand and a metal hammer in the other. An ordinary action. Yet it was anything but ordinary. He gripped the hammer with a firm hand, his focus sharp, his movements forceful. Each strike sent a reverberation through the ground, the metal stake driving deeper with every impact. Then came the final swing. Metal met metal with a violent crack, the kind that split the air open. The impact sheared a sliver of steel from the hammer's head, a fragment so small it should have vanished into the dirt. Instead, it cut through the air in a golden arc, catching the light as it spun toward him. He staggered backwards, his hand pressed to his face, but the moment had already sealed itself. The metal fragment had cut through his retina with surgical precision, and the vision in his left eye fell into permanent darkness. Destiny made its mark, a constant reminder of the wounds he caused, a scar that would forever mirror the truth he believed he could outrun. Yet from that very mark, an opportunity rose for his beloved firstborn daughter. A promise kept. Only then did she understand that the dream had been a courtroom, and her father its judge. He had already witnessed the betrayals she never dared to speak, the truth she carried alone. And when he left this world, the authority moved with him. The accident wasn't random. It was the promise he whispered in the dream, returning to her in the only form the universe could deliver. From then on, the grace of her grandmother Maggie rose through her, effortless and dignified, with her father's quiet fire rising beside it. Every glance and every measured pause carried its own truth. With strategic precision, she spent the next 9 months navigating each moment like a game of chess, every move deliberate, every decision weighed with quiet calculation. She quieted the fire inside her. She calmed the repulsion that rose in her. She drew herself inward long enough to step into the doorway her father had carved for her, moving in silence. When the day finally came, the house was empty as she packed. Most of what filled the car belonged to her son, his clothes, his toys, the small things that made a place feel like home. As the last box was wedged into the back seat, she took one final look at the house that had held too many secrets, too much pain, too many battles fought in silence, and without notice, she left. For the first time in over a decade, she was free. During that turbulent year, while her sister was fleeing toward freedom, their mother received 2 unexpected opportunities. The first was an apartment right next door to Jenn, a place that finally gave them the separation they needed. The second slipped into her life quietly and without announcement, a payout from their father's pension plans. But what their mother chose to do with these opportunities revealed something deeper. Before telling anyone, she donated over $50,000 to Jimmy Swaggart's church, keeping only a fraction of what had been gifted to her. To her, this was an offering, a sacrificial transaction she believed would secure her passage into heaven. To her, going without wasn't deprivation, it was an act of devotion. She believed that choosing poverty and holding tight to her doctrine would lead her safely into heaven, that every sorrow she endured would draw her nearer to the one she longed to see again. After May 17, 2004, nothing mattered more. Not stability, not the future, not life, only death. One day, Jenn veered off her usual routine and found herself outside in the stillness of the afternoon. As she sat in the backyard, her mother's apartment rested at the edge of her view. She could hear the distant sounds of life carrying on, the muted growl of engines, the steady hum of tires rolling over pavement. Then the worldly noise softened, blurring just enough to pull her attention inward, a familiar notification that usually came from Maggie and Cora. Her breath steadied, slow and instinctive. Then, woven into the moment, standing beside her was her father, watching, waiting, knowing. Jenn closed her eyes, and in the space between thought and silence, she finally heard him. "You already know," he said. "Know what?" she asked. "Watch." She opened her eyes, locking onto her mother's apartment as an unfamiliar woman pulled up. Her mother stepped outside to greet her, the exchange quiet and careful, too deliberate to be casual. And suddenly she understood. She wasn't meant to be inside the house. She was meant to intervene. She watched as her mother reached into her pocket. A transaction was about to unfold, a deal carried by destruction, sealed in secrecy. Her father's voice came again, deep and clear. "Go," he said. It wasn't permission, it was instruction. And something inside her ignited. Before she even registered the movement, she was already on her feet, walking with force, demanding attention. Their conversation fell silent as they both turned toward her. In that instant, her mother's heart sank. Her secret was exposed yet again. Her mother stepped aside as Jenn approached the driver's side door. Leaning in so close the woman could feel the heat of her breath, she said in a tone so quiet and controlled the woman had no choice but to listen. "Let me make myself abundantly clear to the two of you. Give her whatever it is you came here with, take your fucking money, and don't ever let me see your motherfucking face around here or near my mother again. Are we clear?" The words, the authority, the force behind them. She could feel him in her voice, in her bones, in the conviction that left no room for negotiation. A barely audible slipped out of the woman's mouth as she put the car in reverse and pulled away. She stood up with her eyes fixed on her mother, her jaw tight. His voice came again, steady and directive. "I don't have the same connections Daddy had," she blurted out as fast as he directed. "So knock it the fuck off before you get yourself involved in something I can't get you out of. Or worse, found dead behind an alley." Her mother flinched, just barely, but she caught it as the silence between them grew. In that moment, they both knew who had spoken. Jenn realized her father had indeed intervened in 95, shaping her mother's consequences toward recovery instead of incarceration. As the truth landed between them, the clarity cut clean. His intervention had placed yet another opportunity for recovery before her mother.